sets it a little bit to the left. 11 yards shy of the record. Williams breaks the hole. Williams, hello, record book. Ricky Williams runs to the Hall of Fame. Touchback. Ricky Williams, touchdown.
Young from the shotgun. Back to throw. Vince looks. Under pressure. He'll tuck it in one. Vince to the 5. Young. Touchdown, Texas. Touchdown, Vince Young. He's done it again. Vince Young has given the Longhorns the lead with 19 seconds to play in the game.
Longhorn Nation, we're back.
Hello and welcome into another edition of the Lone Star Lowdown podcast. My name is Matt Galatzan and I will be your host. And today I'm joined by my co-host Zach Dimmitt. Zach, how you doing?
Pretty good. We took a day off yesterday, and but a lot happened over the weekend. A lot, and then stuff even happened this morning as well. So there's never not anything to talk about when it comes to Texas. So lots to cover.
Yeah, yesterday was my bad. I was traveling, and I've been dealing with an upper respiratory issue, so I needed a day to kind of rest and recuperate. But yeah, let's just dive right into it. We got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk mostly about the NFL draft because there's a lot that happened there in day 3 on Saturday. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Arch Manning and maybe some 2026 draft stuff. We'll see if we have time for that. But let's start off with the big transfer portal news. Jamie Vinson, former Texas Longhorn big man, is on the move. He has committed and signed to Texas A&M to play under new head coach Bucky McMillan. I don't know if this is a big deal or not. I think he's a good player, but I didn't really get a chance to see him play very much while he was at Texas, so I don't know how much of an impact he's going to have on Texas A&M or not. I feel like he'll be able to step in and play pretty early because they don't have a lot there right now in terms of a roster. They've gotten a few transfers in, but they're still kind of building everything. I don't think he would have signed there had he not, thought that he was going to have a chance to play pretty early and be a big part of the rotation. But Zach, why don't you tell us about this, how you feel about it? You're the basketball expert, and if this is going to be a good thing for Texas A&M, how it could affect Texas, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know certainly that A&M fans are having a field day this morning on social media saying, "Oh, I thought Texas players didn't want to come to College Station." Well, we already saw that with Amari Niblack on the football team. So obviously that notion has been put to rest twice now with Jamie Vinson. But, I think he actually could, have a decent role. I mean, they don't have much of a front court quite yet. A&M does. So I think he already had lots of potential when he was here at Texas. And I know a lot of fans that followed the team closely were definitely disappointed that he chose to leave, and it was kind of surprising whenever he did enter the portal because it was kind of late in the process, and so a lot of people had assumed that he was going to be coming back next season. But I think he entered the portal like on the last day. I think that was like last week or whenever that was, and so. But yeah, no. Bucky McMillan's built a decent roster so far. There's still a little bit of ways to go until they complete it, but they got some talented guys, and I think they definitely see the potential that Vincent has. He's not the most athletic guy or anything. Almost 7 foot. He's not going to be running around like Victor Wembanyama out there necessarily, but he has some nice things to his game. He has some shooting potential. He made a 3 last season. He's shown comfort out there. Whenever I was covering the team this past season and would go down on the court before games, he was taking lots of threes and he was making quite a bit of them. So I think he has lots of potential, and hopefully for Texas fans, he doesn't come back to bite the Longhorns next year after another offseason of growth. So we'll see how that goes, and I think it could be a sneaky good addition during SEC play.
I mean, do you think he was ever going to crack the big man rotation at Texas, or was this kind of he saw the writing on the wall? They brought in Traore, they brought in Modest Voikatitis, and they still have Nick Cody on the roster. So you think this was more of a I'm not going to get my shot here. I just want to go find somewhere to play. A&M has some open spots, and this will give me the best chance to get some experience.
Yeah, I think he still would have gotten maybe some playing time. You never know. We've only seen Texas land the two big guys, but the thing about Dalen Swain being that other addition is he can kind of fill a role in the front court as well. So that potentially crowds that area. He's not like a center necessarily like Vincent is, but maybe they talked, Sean Miller and staff talked to Vincent and told him what his potential role would be, and he wanted something bigger. And so I think he definitely would have gotten increased minutes this upcoming season, but it seems like he wanted more. And so, you never know. Maybe they see him coming. Bucky McMillan and staff see him coming off the bench as their second big guy. I know they got Clemens, Zach Clemens, the Kansas transfer, San Antonio guy, close to Austin. So, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I guess he just wants something bigger. I think that's what was a little bit confusing about it for Texas fans potentially is that, they did see an increased role for him next season, Vincent. But, you never know how those conversations go on behind the scenes. And so he's moving not too far east, College Station. And so Texas fans, this is not the last they've seen of Vincent. They're going to be seeing him twice next season, potentially more, as we saw this past year when it came to the SEC tournament. So, and I should mention that he's also, of course, following Frank Haith, the Texas assistant that was just under Rodney Terry for past 2 seasons. So potentially that potentially played a role. You never know. I'm sure Haith had a voice in that recruitment. And so we'll see how that goes in College Station.
And we saw last week that Texas signed the guard from St. John's. In my opinion, it kind of feels like the roster is complete unless something crazy happens. Do you see them making any other additions going forward here, or in terms of transfer portal additions, or maybe are we just going to stick to recruits from here on out, or is there a surprise in coming up?
Yeah, there hasn't really been much that I've seen or anything about another portal ad, and if there was going to be, it may be a guy that's a little bit more unproven. But you never know. Sometimes these things happen out of nowhere. I mean, the recruitment for Camden Heide, the Purdue transfer that came out of nowhere a few weeks back. So you never know. There's still a lot of good names in the portal right now. I know that PJ Haggerty is like the top guy in the portal, and a lot of Texas fans were thinking, no, he's going to be a guy. I just do not see that happening at all. I don't think that, I don't think that's realistic for Texas. I know that college basketball account or whatever tweeted something out, and I don't think that's true. I don't think Texas is really in the mix for him. I'd be surprised if they were. I think maybe that could be that could be potentially him and his team using Texas as leverage to get a bigger NIL deal. He would be awesome at Texas. He'd be their go-to guard, no doubt, but it'd kind of crowd that backcourt in my opinion. So I think if they're going to add anyone else, it may be another international guy potentially. I know Sean Miller has been adamant about that being an emphasis for the roster, and so we'll see. But overall, it's the roster feels pretty complete, and Texas fans may or may not like that. They may feel that it needs another piece, but in my opinion, I think it's a balanced roster for next season. We have mentioned before that there's not like that really go-to star or scorer on the team. That might be okay. Well, we'll see how that goes. We saw that on the Elite Eight team a few years ago. There really wasn't a go-to guy. It kind of became Dylan Dessou down the stretch of that season. But overall, you never knew who was going to lead the team in scoring on a night-to-night basis. So that can actually end up being good for the team down the line, that there's not a one go-to guy. But Yeah, the addition of Simeon Wiltshire is probably the last notable addition this offseason. I don't really see them landing like another huge name, but you never know.
Yeah, the PJ Hackerty stuff is kind of a pipe dream. I mean, I'm sure they would love to take him if he ended up actually being available, but I don't think they're going to pay $4 million for anybody, let alone, the other teams that are in the mix for him, according to that, let's say hard to believe graphic are, all teams that none of those teams are paying $4 million for a player. So maybe if his asking price went down, maybe Texas would try to get themselves into the conversation. But right now, seems like kind of a leverage play. In my opinion, he'll probably just end up back at Memphis or something like that because, if his price does end up going down, then a bunch of big time programs are probably going to jump in there and try and land him anyway. Like, I mean, name a big college basketball program. They'd be in the mix for the, country's #1 scorer. So
right.
Definitely a pipe dream there, but we'll keep monitoring Texas basketball as we go forward. There's also a little bit of other news this past weekend. There was this thing called the NFL draft. Kind of a big deal. Texas once again sets another program record for most players drafted in a single year. That 12 players get drafted. We thought there might be as many as 14 or 15, depending on if some of these guys could sneak into the back half of the second round, or if Isaiah Bond would end up getting drafted. I don't remember what I said last week because I kind of was waffling back and forth on whether or not I thought Bond would get drafted. Him not getting drafted makes total sense to me just based on the situation that they can't really – NFL teams aren't going to take that risk for a guy who could spend, prison time until that situation gets resolved. So he might get a chance later down the line if these things end up in his favor, but they're going to have to wait on that one. Still, though, 12 Longhorns get drafted. I'll just kind of run through the picks here real quick, and then we can kind of dive in after that. But first pick, Kelvin Banks, he went number 9 to the Saints. And then Jahdae Barron to the Broncos in the first round, and Matthew Golden to the Packers, also in the first round at number 20 and 23, respectively. Alfred Collins goes to the 49ers in round 2. Andrew Makuba goes to the Eagles in round 2, which I was surprised that he went that high. I'm happy for him. I'm glad he's getting the opportunity. The Eagles got a really good safety there. So good for him. Vernon Broughton goes to the Saints. I believe that was in round 3 or 4. Is that right,
3.
Zach? Round 3?
Because they had one player in each round.
Yeah.
Check that
real
quick, actually. It was round 3. It was 71 overall.
Yeah, I probably should have written down all the rounds and picks here, but here we are. But Vernon Broughton goes round 3 to the Saints. I love that for him. He really came on the last couple of years for Texas, and especially this past year. I'm sure that Bo Davis had a say in the Saints drafting him because he is now the new Saints defensive line coach. So a little bit of a connection there, and the Saints are building their trenches behind Texas players, and Texas has had some of the best trenches in the country the last couple of years, so that's good for them.
Right. Yeah, I think it was a little bit surprising to see Broughton and Makuba go that high. It has nothing to do with their talent as players. They were both major for Texas's defense this past season, but just based on projections, we had figured that maybe Makuba and Broughton would maybe be like 4th round guys. But to see Makuba go the last pick of the second round, I mean, and to go to the Eagles of all teams, that just shows what teams around the NFL think about him. So that was super kind of surprising, but super happy for him for sure. I know the Eagles they don't miss on draft picks much, and that's pretty obvious based on them just winning the Super Bowl. And Howie Roseman is one of the best in the league for sure. And so. But I thought that was one of my favorite picks, honestly. I've grown up a Cowboys fan. I personally hate the Eagles, but for a guy like Makuba, he's just ultimate teammate, such a great player on the field, and so to have him go to a team like Philly. Happy for him there. And then I'll continue on if you don't mind. Gunnar
Yeah.
Helm in the 4th round, Tennessee Titans. We had talked about it on here. Kind of we're hoping for him to maybe go to Denver, go back to his home state of Colorado. But no, Tennessee swoops in there, adds a new weapon for Cam Ward. Titans have made a lot of moves in their offense, and Helm was one of those. And then, one of the most memorable moments from the weekend was Baron Sorrell. I feel like he may have gotten overlooked a little bit in a lot of these draft talks, but Baron Sorrell going to the 4th round, the Green Bay, and then he's there on I believe it was Saturday, and he's there in Green Bay, gets to greet the commissioner. That was just one of the best moments. I mean, how about Texas just not only continuing to break their own draft record, but just continuing to dominate when it comes to draft coverage. I mean, last year we see Xavier Worthy break the 40-yard dash, and then this year 2 Longhorns get to step right into the spotlight in Green Bay on center stage. I mean, I thought that was just so cool. Who would have thought that would have happened, leading into the draft? And so, Baron Sorrell, that was a pretty emotional moment. There. But then one of the most interesting picks that I know we're going to talk about a little bit was Jaden Blue to Dallas in the 5th round. Kind of a crowded running back room, but I mean, he just caught 2 touchdowns at AT&T Stadium this past season against Ohio State, and now he's going to look to do more. What did you think about that one?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at what the Cowboys did overall here in terms of their plan for drafting skill position players. I think Blue's a good running back, and I think he's going to have success there because of the way that I think Brian Schottenheimer is going to utilize him. I don't think he's going to be the guy that runs the ball 20 to 25 times a game and runs between the tackles. I mean, I think he's capable of it to a certain extent, but he's going to be more of a boutique back for the Cowboys, and they're going to use him in the screen game and in passing situations on jet sweeps a lot. He's not too dissimilar to Tony Pollard. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to use him the exact same way as they use Tony Pollard, because he ended up. I mean, he's 6 foot, 209 pounds. Tony Pollard is, and then Jaden Blue is about 10 pounds lighter. I mean, he could put on that frame. He could add that muscle and add to his body a little bit and potentially be that. So it's not totally out of the question. I think the biggest thing for Jaden is that this is regardless of where he went, obviously, too, is he just needs to work on his ball control and holding on to the football. That was a big issue for him down the stretch, and why he got it was a big issue for him all season, really. That's why he got replaced by Wisner, but he had a couple fumbles in the college football playoff too against Clemson, I believe. Or was that against Clemson?
He fumbled against Washington. I don't believe he fumbled against Clemson, but it was against Mississippi State, where he had the 2 fumbles in SEC play. But Clemson was actually like, go ahead.
I want to say he fumbled against Florida. Either way, he had a lot of fumble issues. That's why he got demoted to the number 2 back. He obviously had some great games, like against Clemson, where he ran for days and days and days and scored a couple long touchdowns. And he scored against Ohio State. And so, very explosive player. He could also help the Cowboys in the return game. I know they have Kevontae Turpin there, but he could still get involved there and give a little bit of a different look. But at the end of the day, Cowboys needed a running back. They got Jaden Blue, and they also got Phil Maffa in the 7th round. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really know what their plan is there. We're gonna veer off into a little Cowboys talk here for a second, so bear with us. I know this is mostly Longhorns people, but entering the draft, the Cowboys signed Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, and they lost their starting running back from last year, whose name escapes me at the moment. Doesn't really matter. Rico Dowdle, right? So their big need coming into this draft was running back and wide receiver. And offensive line was a need. Corner was a need. But wide receiver and running back were the things that they really needed to hit home on, because the offense did not have a lot of playmakers outside of CeeDee Lamb, and Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders are reserve running backs. Before the draft, Stephen Jones comes out and says, we're happy with our running back situation. We're not going to reach for it, which is fine. You don't need to reach for it. You don't need to trade up to get Ashton Genty or, take Amari and Hampton at number 12. But to go offensive line in the first round, which I get because you're trying to replace Zach Martin, and then go edge in the second round, which again I get because that Ezraku is a steal at that spot, and he's going to be a really good player. But then in the third round, when you take Siobhan Ravel, I know they needed a corner also, but you still had running backs on the board like Caleb Johnson, Brayshaw Tootin, Cam Scattaboo. There's another one whose name escapes me as well. I have it on my notes over here, actually. Give me one sec. And Dylan Sampson from Tennessee. So you had 4 running backs who could have immediately been your day one starter in round 3, and you went corner. Okay. You don't have a 4th round pick. You could have gotten a couple of these guys in the 4th round if you had traded up. It seems like the Cowboys have a fundamental misunderstanding of how football is played, and that you need to have a running attack that the teams can at least, have to respect in the play action game, especially when your quarterback is, his biggest strength is his play action passing. It opens up the pass game. And I know that there's all this, and I'm going off on kind of a tangent here, and I'm sorry. I know there's all this, sentiment about how the NFL is a passing league and all that stuff. And that's fine, but you need the run to set up the pass, just like you need the pass to set up the run. It's all about balance. And if you don't have a guy who, you can respect in the run game, then your offense is going to struggle. That's what has happened with the Cowboys the last couple of years. And they didn't address the receiver issue either. So I don't know who's going to be the number 2 receiver next year for the Cowboys. Maybe Stephen Jones will walk out there with Jalen Tolbert and CeeDee Lamb. I don't know. But Jonathan Mingo ain't it. Anyway, I digress. Overall, I do think it's a good fit for Blue. He could be like Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard was used very similarly to Jaden Blue in college, so that could be a good fit there. Let's move down to the 6th round. And so Jaden Blue goes round 5 to the Cowboys. And then we have Hayden Conner and Cam Williams going 207 and 211 in round 6. Conner goes to the Cardinals. Cam Williams goes to the Eagles. Let's start with Conner. Tell me what you think about that landing spot for him and how he could fit into the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, and he joins former Longhorn Christian Jones as well in the O-line. So pretty nice to see there. Yeah, I think they're definitely trying to secure the protection of Kyler Murray for the long term. And, I think that was a not surprising pick, but, definitely interesting to see that, potentially Jake Majors didn't go over Hayden Conner in that slot. Not necessarily to Arizona, but just surprising that Majors maybe went undrafted and Conner, not even the 7th round. He was able to skip the 7th round completely, go to the 6th. And so, I think it paid off that he was doing all the drills at Pro Day. I actually asked Jake Majors about that afterwards. I said, what does that say about Hayden Conner? That he's doing the broad jump, he's doing the 40, he's doing all this stuff in front of these scouts. And Jake Majors is saying he's a competitor. He's going to go out there and show what he can do. And so it definitely paid off for him. I know that he, didn't have to do the 40 necessarily, didn't have to do all these things in front of all the scouts, but he wanted to make sure that no stone got left unturned at Texas's Pro Day. And so it was good to see that for him. And then Cam Williams to 207 of the Eagles. I thought that was, that might be the most underrated best fit out of all these guys. It'll go overlooked a little bit as far as best fits go, but you're talking about a guy that has all the talent in the world, in Cam Williams, but he had his struggles, last season. A lot of people thought maybe he should have came back to Texas for another year. He had his struggles, and notably when it came to some holdings, some of the holdings were not, his fault. I think the refs probably could have kept the flag in their pocket on some of those last season, but he had his struggles here and there. But such a talented guy, has an NFL body, and I think if you're going to the Eagles, that's the best possible landing spot you can go if you're a raw offensive lineman that still has room to grow. Because Jeff Stoutland is one of the best. He probably is the best offensive line coach in the league, and so we've seen him develop guys like Jordan Mailata. That entire Eagles offensive line is the reason that they've been able to go to 2 Super Bowls and win 1 in the past 3 years. And so Cam Williams, they definitely see him as a long-term piece on that O line, and I think being able to watch his development under Stoutland over the next few years will be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that he's going to end up being fine. He's a very talented guy, still very raw. I think he should have come back to Texas for another year. I think that when he declared, he was under the impression, and it was at the time kind of expected that he could be as high as a first-round pick. But, I think as the pre-draft process rolled on and teams got a better look at his game and, the things that he still needs to work on, he started to slide. Maybe he didn't do as well in the pre-draft interviews that, he could have, and that maybe that played a role. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but he probably should have come back for another year, refined his game a little bit, gotten some more experience, and then gone out next year. I think that would have been best for all parties involved, Texas and Cam Williams. But he made his choice, and I think, like you said, if there's anywhere that he could have gone that would be a good fit for him and give him some time to develop and turn into a good NFL player, it's definitely Philadelphia. There's a reason they're the best franchise in the NFL. They're always there. They're always picking guys that, they just keep getting players, man. I don't know how they do it, but they do it, and it pisses me off.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys need to pull a little bit of a Schloss Nagel to Texas, and they should steal Howie Roseman. But Jerry Jones will never give up any power to anyone else, so don't see that happening. But man, if the Cowboys could have Howie Roseman, it would be a whole different story. That's for sure.
Yeah, if the Cowboys just at least tried to model a little bit of what they do based on what the Eagles have done, I think that'd be a lot more successful. But what do I know? I'm just a stupid beat writer. But anyway, let's move on to probably the biggest – I hate calling this the biggest story for Texas because Kelvin Banks and Jahdae Barron and Matthew Golden deserve their moment as the 3 first-round picks. So that's probably the biggest story. But in my opinion, the most interesting and ridiculous thing that happened in the draft was Quinn Ewers falling all the way to the 231st pick in the 7th round to the Miami Dolphins, almost going undrafted. All the talk was about Shedeur Sanders going to the 5th round, and I understand why that stole national headlines because of who Shedeur is. This is almost equally ridiculous to me, though. I didn't think that they're 2 different conversations. Shedeur Sanders turned a lot of people off with the way that he approached his interviews, and you can go read about it in these different reports that are out there online. I'm not going to get too much into it because I don't really care. But the Shedeur thing was a different situation. Quinn's slide makes no sense to me. The only thing, and during our show on Texas Sports Unfiltered yesterday that I do with Patrick Davis, we tried to figure it out. And the only thing that I can think of is that most of the teams that were picking between rounds 5, 6, and 7 didn't think Quinn would be on the board by that point. That's when they were going to be targeting quarterbacks. They thought that he was going to be gone, so some of these teams didn't scout him as thoroughly as they should have. I think that was probably part of it. I think that, the late, like there was the big run on quarterbacks early with Cam Ward and Jackson Dart, and then you had Jalen Milroe going and Tyler Shuck going. But after that, there was kind of a long gap. And I think quarterbacks started going later because the general consensus is this wasn't a very good quarterback class in comparison to next year. So I think a lot of teams, after those kind of top 4 guys went, were like, all right, we're going to push this quarterback thing to next year because we don't really think any of these guys are going to, move the needle for us. If we're in need of a quarterback in 2026, we want to make sure that we're set up to get, whoever comes out, because it's a much deeper quarterback class. It's a much better quarterback class. Either way, like, there's no excuse for these teams passing on Quinn Ewers, who I think was the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the class. He's definitely the smartest quarterback in the class. 0 character issues. All he did was win. He was productive. He fought through injuries. He was tough. I thought it was absolutely. Now, this is a podcast, so we're not on like a radio or anything, so I'm just going to say this. I thought it was absolutely fucking ridiculous that Cam Miller went to the Raiders before Quinn. Like, that's North Dakota State quarterback over Quinn Ewers is stupid. Either way, I'm going to stop ranting about it, and I'm going to get your thoughts here in a second. But I do think Quinn ended up in a good spot. Miami is a place where he fits the offense. They do things pretty similarly to what Texas does in terms of, the route trees and the timing and what they ask their quarterbacks to do. This isn't a knock or to say anything bad against Tua Tagovailoa, but he gets hurt a lot. I think that's well documented. If he has another concussion, that'll be like his 17th concussion in 2 years. So that leaves an opportunity for Quinn to see the field. I think that Zach Wilson is Zach Wilson, and that'll eventually work itself out. I think they brought Quinn in to be a security blanket, backup, potential starter down the line if something happens to Tua. So I think it's a great fit there. And I also think that this is going to motivate him a lot. I think that he is going to have – I'm not going to say he's going to be Tom Brady or anything like that, but when a player who thinks he should go higher, who's competitive and is trying to live out his dream, feels slighted and his draft status gets pushed back, I think that's just going to motivate him to get better and work harder. And, I think his ceiling is Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is not the most talented, gifted quarterback in the entire world, but he does the right things. He puts the ball in the right place. He manages the team, and he led San Francisco to Super Bowl appearance. So, I think Quinn could be that at the right place. I think Miami is a spot where that could happen. But I'm ranting and raving about this because it really pissed me off, and I don't think Quinn deserved it. But Zach, why don't you tell me about what you thought about the Quinn situation?
Yeah, I think, people, they can have their gripes about, him falling behind Will Howard, McCord, even Shador, obviously, Dylan Gabriel. I can understand those gripes. But, it happens. The real problem with me is that we have always talked about him being injury prone. And yet Graham Mertz and Curtis Rourke, who both, Rourke had a torn ACL, first of all. And Mertz had his season ended by injury as well. I forgot. I know he had a concussion and another thing as well. I forget what exactly that injury was. But both these guys have been dealing with injury. And yet Quinn goes.
Let's not forget Tyler
Mertz.
Shuck. Let's not forget Tyler
Right.
Shuck in the second round is one of the most injured quarterbacks ever. He's like 27 years old now.
Right. That was definitely a question mark for sure. I mean, but the fact that he fell below those guys, Mertz, Rourke, and then Cam Miller, who probably had a lot of his draft stock boosted by the one game that he played well against Colorado. I know he had other good performances, but I'm saying that was a big spotlight performance for him that he capitalized on. I just don't see it makes zero sense. I'm in the same boat as you. Riley Leonard, another guy who's tough as hell, obviously led Notre Dame to the national championship game, but he is nowhere near the kind of passer that Quinn Ewers is. They're totally different quarterbacks, obviously, but I just don't see how in Indianapolis already has Anthony Richardson, who has his own question marks, of course, but I just don't see how they think Riley Leonard is a long-term answer above him. And so I don't understand some of these late round picks when it came to passing up on Quinn. I think you make a good point. It's possible that these teams just didn't have a full evaluation and they don't want to take a guy like Quinn who they don't have a full eval on. They're gonna do pick the guys that they have more detailed analysis on their draft board. So I think that has to be the reason why, because Quinn, he's far from the perfect quarterback. We saw that at Texas, but he gives you intangibles that most guys cannot match. And so none of the guys on this list amongst the quarterbacks that were selected had the kind of winning pedigree that Quinn does. I mean, this guy lost one road game his entire college career. Took over a team that was 5-7. I know we've talked about this a million times. Took over a team that was 5-7. 8 wins his first season, and then goes to the college football the playoff semifinal back-to-back years. I don't know. No other guys on this list, except for Will Howard, obviously winning the national title, can say that about their career. And so I don't understand it at all. I guess injuries, his injury issues, were a potential question mark, but that shouldn't be enough to have him go behind Rourke and Mertz, who had their own injury problems, and then Shuck, like you mentioned. So, I think, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, those guys, Dylan Gabriel, okay, you can have your arguments about whether they should have gone above Quinn. I don't have too much of a problem with it. It is what it is. But yeah, it became kind of ridiculous towards the back end of the draft. Whenever you see these other names popping up, I just didn't understand it at all. So I'm in the same boat as you.
Yeah. So another thing that Patrick brought up yesterday that I want to talk about too, that I thought was very interesting. It was like a very interesting theory. Quinn Ewers is a big name. It's not Shedeur Sanders. That's, that comes with all this Tim Tebow-like star power that it is what it is. But Quinn is a big name, and if you draft Quinn as your, backup quarterback or whatever, there's going to be a lot more noise if your starter struggles. For Quinn to, just because of the skins that he has the wall in college and his resume, there's going to be a lot of people calling for Quinn to, take over. And, like if the Raiders had done it for Geno Smith, like if he struggles, why aren't we playing Quinn ball? It becomes a controversy. They're not going to listen to fans, but it's an annoying controversy you don't want to have to deal with. Pittsburgh, kind of the same thing when they bring in Aaron Rodgers. The minute that Aaron Rodgers looks bad, people are going to be banging their hand on the table for Quinn. Any team that needed a quarterback that has a starter that's not firmly entrenched, like a Matthew Stafford for the Rams or something like that. Like, can you imagine if Quinn was on the Dallas Cowboys? People would be calling for him all day over Dak Prescott, because Dak Prescott gets more hate than any quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
And it's ridiculous. So maybe some of these teams passed on Quinn because they didn't want to have to deal with that. And they wanted to get a guy who, and like the Texans are another one, but they have CJ Stroud. So I guess it's a little bit different, but they wanted to get a guy who, when you bring him in, there's no question this guy's going to be a career backup. And he's not going to push for, he's not going to push our starter. He's just going to give us a good guy to back him up and play a game if we need him to. And there's no pressure on our starter. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. It's just interesting to think about. But we've been talking about Quinn for probably 15 minutes now, so we should probably move on. Staying on the NFL draft, though, 12 guys for the Longhorns went, like I said earlier, new school record, all that good stuff. Who do you think – actually, let's do it this way. We'll break it up into day one and then – or day one and day two, and then the rest of the draft. So we'll go Thursday, Friday, and then you'll pick another one for day three. Who do you think was the best team fit for a Longhorn on day 1 or day 2?
Day one, I mentioned this about Kelvin Banks. It's hard to say, when it comes to he's like a best fit, because I think he was just simply the best overall they could have gotten there. And so you can't go wrong with that for New Orleans. But I think best fit, it's tough between Barron and Golden. I'm going to give the edge to Barron because he goes into a really good situation with a really good defense already. And so there's not too much pressure on his shoulders as a rookie. So I think that fit with Denver, and Sean Payton, that'll be good for him. Just being able to not be asked to be the number one cornerback right away. He gets to be on the opposite side of Pat Surtain, and he also joins a lot of former Longhorns as well in that secondary. So I think that's probably the best fit on day one. Day two, I mentioned it before. I think Makuba to the Eagles. I just think that their defense under Vic Fangio last year was elite, and he turned that secondary around after they had their struggles the season before. And so I think he'll be a weapon for them in Philly. And so, I was going to say maybe Golden as potentially the best fit on day one. But it's just kind of, he joins a wide receiver room that's talented, but there's a lot of question marks surrounding who's the number one guy over there. So that remains to be seen how that will work out. But I think Barron on day one and then Makuba day two.
Yeah, I was going to go Barron as well on day one, just because, they play a lot of zone. Barron thrives in zone. We talked about that on Friday last week, but I think he's a perfect fit for what they do defensively. But I'll go with Matthew Golden on day one, just because Jordan Love needed a guy who he could count on, who has sure hands and a true number one. They got him with Matthew Golden, hands down, and they got him in a really good spot at number 23. He could have gone much higher than that, and the fact that he fell to 23 is tremendous for them. So I love that fit for Matthew Golden. Day two, mine was Alfred Collins, because he's going to have a chance to play a lot and play early, be part of a rebuilt defensive line that still has Nick Bosa. They added some other pieces to it as well. I think it's going to be, he's really going to have a chance to shine there as a day one starter potentially. And I think he's just scratching the surface with his potential as well. So I think he could be, I hesitate to put this kind of pressure on him because it is very lofty, but he goes in the second round to San Francisco at pick number 43. Yeah. There's another guy who plays for the Kansas City Chiefs named Chris, who was just scratching the surface of his potential when he left Mississippi State. Got picked in the second round by Kansas City at pick number 37. He's now the best defensive tackle in the NFL. I'm not going to say that Alfred Collins is going to be Chris Jones, but I think he could have a similar trajectory and be a really, really, really good player in the NFL. Maybe not to the level of Chris Jones, but I think he'll be an elite player in the NFL once he puts it all together. And I think San Francisco is a great place for him to do that, because they just got Robert Saleh back as a defensive coordinator. I think it's going to be a really good situation for him. Let's go to day three now. I'm going to go first this time because I don't want you stealing my guy again. So I'm going to go with Barron Sorrell to the Packers, because number one, their defense fits his strengths tremendously. He'll be able to stand up as a pass rusher and come off the edge, in that kind of 3-4 look. And he'll have a chance to play a lot. He's not going to start from day one, but he'll have a chance to play a lot and play early as well. I also thought it was really cool that he flew up to Green Bay just because he wanted to hear his name called, and it ends up being the Packers who picked him. So we talked about that a few minutes ago, though. But I thought that was really cool. But out of all these guys on day three, I thought that Barron Sorrell was to the Packers was the best fit. Quinn would be my second choice just because I think Miami is a perfect fit for his skill set. But what's your choice for day 3, Zach?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Gunnar Helm to Tennessee. I think that, their offense, it was pretty horrid last year with Will Levis, and they've done a lot to address that for sure. They just signed Tyler Lockett, bring back Calvin Ridley, but they don't have really a star tight end. Chig Okonkwo, he's pretty solid for sure for Tennessee, but not really a star. And so I think that they're definitely going to use Helm and Okonkwo next year for Cam Ward. And, we saw what Helm can do we always use the term security blanket. It's kind of a cliche when it comes to tight ends, but, Gunnar Helm was that for Quinn last year, but he also was an excellent blocker, and he was a guy that can make highlight reel catches in the air as well. And so I think that, coming in with Cam Ward, they can build some chemistry right away at rookie minicamp this offseason. And so, you never know. You can see Helm making a decent impact next year for Tennessee just because they don't really have that star tight end quite yet. And then it's kind of an offense that has, a few big names with the Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, drafted a few rookie receivers as well. And so I think there could be room for Helm to, command a decent amount of targets next year. We'll see how that goes. But I think that was one of the fits that kind of caught my eye just because of the personnel that's already on the Titans.
Yeah, I think that's a good shot. I think he'll have a chance to do something in Tennessee as well. He, I think tight ends are kind of undervalued in the draft to a certain extent. I know there was 3 first-round tight ends, but you can find tight ends, all the way through 7 rounds in the NFL draft who can play and play early. Dalton Schultz and Jake Ferguson are both good examples of that for the Texans and the Cowboys. I think Dalton Schultz was like a 6th or 7th round pick, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. That's way back in the past, but he wasn't a first round pick. I'll put it that way. And he was a good player for the Cowboys, and he's a good player for the Texans. So I think Gunnar Helm has a chance. It has a better skill set than Dalton Schultz, and he could be a really good NFL player. So I like that shout. Let's wrap this up. We'll talk about Arch tomorrow because I think that's going to be a very long discussion. But let's just round out. There were also 5 Longhorns who signed undrafted free agent contracts. Jake Majors went to the Buccaneers. Bill Norton went to the Rams. Silas Bolden goes to the Vikings. Gavin Holmes goes to the Lions. And David Benda goes to the Titans. Mo Blackwell, Velton Gardner, and Juan Davis, I have not seen any news about them as of yet. Maybe they get invited to a rookie mini camp or something like that. And as we said before, Isaiah Bond is nowhere to be found because of his off-the-field issues. So, Zach, do any of these – there's one for me. Which one of these undrafted free agent signings stands out to you as a guy who could see the field quickly?
Well, I hope I'm not stealing yours. Yeah, I hope I'm not stealing yours. We haven't talked about this beforehand. So I think that David Benda to the Titans is one of the more interesting ones. I mean, they completely revamped their defense this offseason, traded away Kenneth Murray to the Cowboys, released Harold Landry, who signed with the Patriots. Their linebacker group has looked completely different. Jack Gibbons is another guy. Signed with the Patriots. Titans didn't choose to re-sign him. So, David Benda, undrafted guy, he could have a chance to step into that linebacker room and actually carve out like a depth role for himself. Not saying he's going to be a starter or anything like that as a rookie, but there's definitely opportunities for him next season in Tennessee. I mean, the whole defense has lost a lot of notable names, and I think the Titans defense actually last year was pretty solid, all things considered. And so he has a chance to, step into a room that lost a bunch of names, but is still a decent unit nonetheless. So I think he could have a chance to fly around on defense next year for them. And, we'll see how that goes. Maybe he just lands a practice squad spot, but I think he's definitely going to be one to watch just based on the moves that they've made this offseason. Yeah,
you did not steal mine, so I appreciate that. Mine's Silas Bolden, just because I think of what he can do in special teams in the return game will help him land somewhere that he can make an impact pretty early. I mean, he landed in with the Vikings. Whether or not he stays there or gets assigned to the practice squad or whatever, I think he'll have a chance to be a part of their 58-man roster and be a return guy for Minnesota. I'm also going to cheat, and I'm going to have two, because I think Jake Majors is a good fit with the Buccaneers because they only have one center on the roster. And whether or not he's on the 58-man roster to start the year or not, if there's any kind of injury up front in the interior, I think that he'll be there to help fill that gap, and he'll have a chance to, play pretty early on in his career. I think it's going to be really hard for Bill Norton to get into the rotation with the Rams just because they have such a good defensive line. Gavin Holmes might have a chance with the Lions, but again, that's a really good secondary, so it's hard seeing those guys break in early, but you never know. They're good players. They played well at Texas. They could find their way into the rotation at some point. But overall, I think that, sending 16 or 17 guys to the NFL, 12 drafted, 5 undrafted free agents, that's a hell of a haul for Steve Sarkisian, and that's a really good recruiting tool. I don't know if they're going to have as many next year or not. Right now, they're projected to have, in the latest way too early 2026 mock drafts, which just makes me want to puke that people are putting those out. But there's 3 Longhorn first rounders again. Arch Manning, I don't think is going pro after the 2026 season, but he's everybody's number 1 pick. And then, you have Anthony Hill and Manny Muhammad in there as well. So Longhorns are going to be good in the NFL draft for a long time. And this year is, just another edition of that. 23 players drafted in the last 2 years. That's pretty damn good. But yeah, let's close it out there. That's going to do it for another edition of the Lone Star Lowdown podcast. You can listen to us on pretty much every major podcast platform out there, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pocket Casts, or any of your other favorites. If we are not on one of your favorites, then please let me know, and I'll get us on there. We're also live on X, Facebook, and YouTube every day around 10 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. You can catch us there. And also, don't forget to check out Texas Longhorns on SI for all your latest news and notes regarding Texas Longhorn sports. If you enjoyed the podcast here today, make sure to hit the like button and the sub button on your favorite platform. But most importantly, be sure to tell somebody you love them, and we'll catch you next time.
Fight.